Hey beauties and beasts! It's time to gather around for some late night spooky story time, your favorite time of the day. And tonight's extra special because it's Halloween. Happy Halloween, guys. And isn't this so cute? I bought this thing for Halloween. We kind of look alike, right? Anyways, I'm wondering what you guys are doing right now. Maybe throwing a little Halloween party or chilling at home, like me, with full makeup on. I really like my makeup today. I really like my outfit today. But I have to take it off because I have nowhere to go. I have no friends. I only got you guys. So I'm here with you tonight for Halloween, which is great. It is. Yeah. Okay. Tonight for our Halloween special, I've got not one, but two true stories to share with you guys. And these stories are about things that actually happened to me back in high school in Korea and later when I was working as a journalist. Yeah, and a lot of you have been asking me if I'm not scared talking all about these spooky stories. I mean, of course I'm scared. And some asked me if I ever had experiences with these beings. So I'm bringing that to you tonight. Okay, now I am giving you a fair warning. These are really scary real-life stories, not one of those urban legends that starts with a friend of a friend. These are things I personally witnessed with my own eyes. And even now, I still get chills just thinking about them. So let's dive right in. So before getting into my first story, let me set the scene for you. Back when I was in high school, I was incredibly sensitive, like really sensitive. I would wake up at the slightest sound, pick up on things other people didn't notice. And looking back, I think I was just completely exhausted and stressed out of my mind, which probably made me more receptive to things I shouldn't have been seeing. So I went to what's called a foreign language high school in Korea, and now if you're not familiar with the Korean education system, let me paint you a picture. These schools are pretty prestigious, like only the top students from each region get accepted after entrance exams. So you can imagine kids who were number 1 or 2 in their entire school districts suddenly finding themselves struggling to stay in the middle of the pack. Yeah, imagine taking every competitive, high-achieving student and cramming them into one building together. The atmosphere was suffocating. And this is where it gets darker. This was an all-girls school, and there were stories about girls who couldn't handle the pressure, girls who jumped from the buildings, girls who took their own lives. And before you think I'm exaggerating, you need to understand something about Korea. There is this one exam, the Korean SAT, that happens once a year, just once. And in the minds of these teenage girls, that single test determines their entire future. Get into a good university, and you're set for life. Fail, and you're doomed. That's the belief system these kids are trapped in. And now, as someone in their 30s looking back, that's absolutely insane, right? But when you're 16, 17 years old, and that's all you've been ever told, that is your entire reality. And that pressure cooker environment created something heavy in that school. Something that lingered in the air, in the walls, in every corner of those buildings. So this particular story takes place during my first year there. One day, our homeroom teacher suggests something completely out of left field. A classroom camping night. So he wanted all of us to stay late, play games together, spread out sleeping bags, and basically have a sleepover in our classroom. And I guess he thought it would help us bond, help us decompress from all that competitive stress we were under. So yeah, most of the girls were excited about it, planning what snacks to bring, what games to play, but I wasn't particularly thrilled because I'm not a game person. I really suck at it. But I figured camping in a classroom, that's kind of unique, right? Could be interesting. But I had no idea what was waiting for me that night. Everything starts out normal enough. Classes end, and by around 9 or 10 p.m., We're all gathered in our classroom playing whatever games our teacher had organized. And I don't even remember what the games were. That was not the part that burned itself into my memory. What I do remember is the layout of our classroom. So we had these sliding doors, the kind that slide to the side with a rectangular window at about head height. Very typical for Korean schools. And through that window, you could see someone's head down to about their collarbone area. So we're playing games, and I'm terrible at them. I am not into it. So my attention starts to wander, and I find myself staring at the classroom door window without really meaning to. And there I see one of my classmates out in the hallway, poking her head in through the window, smiling, watching us play. And then I see something behind her, something black, something dark, and distinctly human-shaped. So at first I think maybe, I'm seeing things. Maybe it's just another student standing in the shadows. But the more I stare, the more I can make out this black silhouette standing directly behind my friend. And the way it was positioned, it wasn't just standing there casually. You know that feeling, how do you describe it? It felt intentional. It felt like it was showing itself to me specifically, like it wanted me to know it was there, like it had chosen this exact moment to reveal itself. And my blood runs cold. Every hair on my body stands up. I am frozen in place. And in my panic, I do something that still seems crazy to me. I take out my contact lenses right there in the middle of the game. I had terrible eyesight, and I thought maybe if I removed my lenses, everything would just blur away and I wouldn't have to see it anymore. But what happens next still haunts me. Even without my contacts, when everything else became a complete blur, that black shadow stayed crystal clear, and I was sure it was watching me. I completely lost it. I had to get out of that classroom immediately. So I grabbed one of my friends and told her I needed some air, and we decided to walk to the convenience store just outside the school gates. This is where it gets spookier, but I'll wash my face first. So as we were walking toward the main gate, I noticed something odd. There is a car parked right there, just inside the school entrance, not in the parking lot, but just literally right at the gate. And I thought it was strange. At that hour of the night, why would a car be parked there? But I didn't think too much about it. And we had to walk past this car anyway to get out of the gate. And as we get closer, I notice the interior light is on. That dome light that comes on when someone's sitting in the front seat. So I'm thinking, who would be sitting in a car parked at school at that hour? My eyes drift toward the driver's side window as we pass. And there is someone in the driver's seat, a girl. She was wearing our school summer uniform, the white short-sleeved blouse and skirt. But it was winter, dead of winter. Every single student in that school was wearing the heavy winter uniform. So why would someone be wearing the summer one? And why would a student be sitting in the driver's seat of a car? So I'm completely frozen again, but my legs keep moving forward, carrying me closer to the car because we have to pass that car to get out of the school. Something is just pulling my eyes toward it. Like, I need to see who it is. I need to see the face. And my eyes are locked on that driver's seat. And as I get closer, as the angle shifts and I can see more clearly through this window, there is no face. There is no head. From the neck up, nothing. Just the torso of a girl in a summer uniform, sitting perfectly still in that driver's seat. That interior light illuminating the empty space where her head should be. And you know that thing that happens to you when you're so terrified you can't even scream? Your voice just completely abandons you? that is where I was. I couldn't say a word to my friend. I just grabbed her arm and started walking faster, not running because somehow running felt more dangerous, but moved as quickly as I could toward that convenience store. And the second we got inside, under those bright fluorescent lights, my legs just gave out, just completely buckled. I had experienced sleep paralysis before, sure, but I have never, ever seen something like that. Never in my waking life. Never something so vivid and so impossibly wrong. And in that moment, I knew with absolute certainty, I cannot stay at this school tonight. I cannot do this camping thing. I need to go home right now. I turned to my friend, trying to keep my voice steady. I saw something really weird. There was someone in that car with a light on, but she didn't have a head. I need to go home. I need to tell the teacher I'm leaving. And you know what my friend said to me? What car? There was no car. What's wrong with you? I went straight back to the classroom. I found my teacher and started rambling. And I'm sure I sounded absolutely insane, telling him I needed to go home. He kept asking if I was okay, looking at me like I was possessed or something. And later that night, he even called my parents, asking them to check on me. And I couldn't tell anyone what I'd really seen. How do you explain something like that? Who would believe you? But that wasn't the end of it. After that night, I would occasionally see her, the girl in the summer uniform, reflected in windows, standing in places she shouldn't be, always wearing that summer uniform in the middle of winter, always watching. Well, maybe watching. She didn't have a head, so we can only guess. So, who was she? Was she a student who died unfairly, tragically? Why couldn't she leave the school? Why was she trapped there, wandering those hallways? Our school was really old, with a long history, so it would be stranger if there weren't any restless spirits lingering in those halls. But seeing her with my own eyes made me wonder. Because the energy I felt from this girl wasn't just strong. It was sad, deeply, achingly sad. Like she was trapped in a moment of despair that never ended. So yeah, I still wonder about her sometimes. That girl in the summer uniform with no head, sitting in a car. I don't know. Is she still there? Still wandering those halls? Still sitting in that car? I guess I'll never know. But I do know that I never stayed late at that school again. Now that experience at my high school wasn't the last time I would encounter something I couldn't explain. In fact, my second story might be even more terrifying than the first, because this time it didn't just watch me. This time it touched me. This happened years later when I was working as a journalist at a major broadcast company. And let me tell you, this encounter was so terrifying that even now, years after leaving that job, I can still feel the cold pressure of hands around my throat. So this was during one of the most exhausting periods of my life. You know how people say that when you're worn down, when your energy is depleted, you become more vulnerable to things. Your spiritual defenses weaken. And I think that's exactly what happened to me during this time. I was working in the news department, and if you've never worked in broadcast news, let me explain what that's like. News doesn't sleep. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So my typical day would start at 8 in the morning, writing articles, recording segments, editing news footage. And those days didn't end at 5 or 6 like a normal job. No, I would regularly be there past midnight. And when a big story broke in the early morning hours, you just stayed. Sometimes you would go home for a few hours, shower, change clothes, and come right back. And now I don't want to make it sound like I was the only one suffering. The entire news department was like that. But I was new at the time. I was the newbie, and I think they pushed me harder because of it. The staff was huge. News assistants, directors, designers, editors, everyone working at this breakneck pace, always exhausted, always running on fumes. And because of this insane schedule, the company had set up a women's break room. So this room was equipped with several bunk beds, the kind with metal ladders where you climb up the second level. So during lunch hours, every single bed would be occupied. People grabbed whatever rest they could, wherever they could get it. And I used it all the time. The break room was on the 12th floor, if I remember correctly. On this particular night, I had just finished the evening broadcast. So it was well after hours, past the time when most people had already gone home. I dragged myself up to the 12th floor and into the break room, and it was completely empty. It was already dark outside, so I don't know, the emptiness made it feel a bit eerie, but I was too exhausted to care much. Okay, let me describe the layout for you. When you first walked in, there was a common area with sofas where staff could sit and relax. And then further back, there was a sliding door. You would slide that door open, and on both sides of the room, there were these bunk beds lined up against the wall. And most people preferred sleeping on the lower bunks, obviously, because who wants to climb a ladder when they're so exhausted? You only went up to the second level if all the lower beds were taken. That night, even though the room was completely empty and I could have chosen any lower bunk, I climbed up to a top bunk, and I had my own reasons. When you're on the lower level, you can hear everything. Every footstep, every person walking by, and I didn't want to be disturbed. I wanted complete isolation to grab whatever rest I could before diving back into work. So I climbed the metal ladder, settled into the top bunk, and closed my eyes. I couldn't have been lying there for more than a few minutes when I heard a noise. The main door opening, someone else coming in. And I thought nothing of it, just another exhausted colleague pulling a late night, same as me. I kept my eyes closed, trying to fall asleep. Then I heard the sliding door, that distinct sound of the door rolling open. Someone was coming into the sleeping area. Great, I remember thinking. So much for having the place to myself. But then something happened that made my blood run cold. I heard footsteps approaching my bunk, and then the unmistakable sound of someone climbing my ladder. That specific creaking sound metal makes when weight is applied to it. That rhythmic squeaking sound of someone coming up. And I assumed whoever it was didn't realize someone was already up there. So I kept my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep, figuring they'd see me and climb back down to find another bed. But this person, or thing, didn't climb back down. It stopped right at the top of the ladder. I could feel a person's presence, feel eyes on me. This thing was just standing there, staring at me. And then I felt weight on my bed. Someone was climbing onto my bunk. I could feel this thing moving up from the foot of the bed, the mattress shifting under its weight as it crawled forward. Then I felt it settle right on my shins. This thing was kneeling on my legs. And I tried to open my eyes, but I couldn't. My body refused to respond. I tried to move, nothing. I was completely paralyzed. And then came the part that still makes my skin crawl. This thing, and I say thing because by now I knew this wasn't a colleague, started swaying back and forth, kneeling on my shins, rocking like some grotesque pendulum. I wanted to scream. The scream was right there, caught in my throat, but no sound would come out. In my entire life, I had never been that terrified. You know that fear where your heart is pounding so loud you're convinced the thing can hear it? That was exactly where I was. The swaying continued for what felt like an eternity, but it was probably only seconds. And then, as if sensing my absolute horror, this thing moved. It moved fast, impossibly fast. It crawled up so fast, making this sound. In an instant, it was at my chest, then my shoulders, then my throat. I felt hands close around my neck, cold hands. The pressure was immediate and intense. It was squeezing my neck. It was choking me. I was going to die. That was the thought screaming through my paralyzed body. This is how I die, strangled by something I can't even see in an empty break room on the 12th floor, and no one will know what happened to me. I was so scared. I fought with everything I had, thrashing against the paralysis, trying to move, trying to breathe, trying to do anything, but my body wouldn't obey. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. It was like a switch flipped. The paralysis broke, and in that same instant, I saw it. A form sliding off my legs, moving down the ladder with that same unnatural speed. It wasn't climbing, it was sliding, flowing down like water. I lay there frozen, not from paralysis this time, but from pure shock. What just happened? Was that sleep paralysis? A nightmare? But I was awake. I knew I was awake. I was too terrified to stay in that bed another second. I scrambled down the ladder, nearly falling in my panic, and that is when I noticed it. The one that leads into the sleeping area, it was open. And when I had climbed into the bed, I distinctly remembered that door being closed. I had closed it myself, but now it stood wide open. Someone, something had opened it and come in. What I experienced wasn't a dream. It was real. After that night, I never slept in the women's break room again. Not once. I'd rather work straight through exhaustion than go back to that 12th floor. I didn't tell anyone about it for a while. I mean, what would I even say? But then, one day, during a staff gathering, the conversation turned to scary experiences. People started sharing strange things that happened to them. And suddenly, that night came flooding back to me. I told them. I described everything, the presence climbing into my bed, kneeling on my shins, that horrible swaying motion, the hands around my throat. The room went silent. Everyone's face changed. "You saw her too?" someone finally said. Turns out I wasn't the first, not even close. Multiple staff members had encountered this entity. Same break room, same experience. The choking, the overwhelming sense of malevolent rage. And one colleague had gotten a better look at the form. It was a woman, she said, or at least it had been. The women's break room ghost was apparently well known among the staff, a dark secret everyone knew, but no one talked about openly. So who was she? What happened to her? And I've heard that broadcast stations are notorious for hauntings. In an industry where people work themselves to the bone, where exhaustion is normalized and people regularly pull all-nighters, where stress is crushing and constant, maybe it's not surprising that some people never leave, even after death. So I'm guessing, was she a staff member who died from overwork? Did she collapse in that very break room, working herself to death? Is that why she haunts that space, unable to let go of the place where her life ended? That anger I felt from her was so strong. This wasn't a sad spirit, like the girl in the summer uniform from my high school. This one was furious. This one wanted to hurt people. It's been years since I left that company, but I have never forgotten that night. The feeling of those cold hands, the absolute helplessness of being unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to scream. So, there you have it. My two most terrifying encounters with things that shouldn't exist, but do. Two different spirits, two different places, but both appearing when I was at my most vulnerable, my most exhausted, my most defenseless. And I still wonder about them sometimes. The sad girl in the summer uniform, forever wandering the halls of that prestigious school. The angry woman in the break room, strangling anyone who dares to rest where she once did. I think about what happened to make her so angry. Whether she's still there, still climbing into the beds of exhausted workers, still wrapping her hands around their throats in the dark. I really hope they found peace. If you have ever experienced something similar, whether at your workplace or anywhere else, drop it in the comments. Let's share these stories because the more I've talked about this over the years, the more I've realized these experiences are far more common than we want to admit. Okay, happy Halloween, guys, and I hope you enjoyed listening to my stories today. Sleep tight and see you soon. Bye-bye.